Good evening, everybody. Welcome to This Week in El Salvador. I'm Tele-Aviacion, and it's nice to be back again. I just got back a couple of days ago from El Salvador, and it was a really beautiful trip. The people are wonderful, incredibly warm. As is usual, I found a tremendous amount of people. I never meet anybody that has any problem with what's going on in El Salvador as far as the special measures that they're taking against the gangs. As is usual, everybody that I meet there is incredibly happy, and I'm talking from every area, not just San Salvador, but areas La Union and Ahuachapan, all over the area. People are very, very happy with what is happening now in the government, and all I know is it's something that's going to be very, very slow. And the reason that it's taking such a long time is because whenever you have people that have to get together, any group, any legislative body that has to get together and form banking laws and different types of other legal mechanisms to achieve what they're trying to achieve, especially with the Bitcoin city and the banking situation, these things take a lot of time. And unfortunately, as of course the rest of the world would say, oh, it shouldn't take any time at all. After all, they have a dictator. No, it isn't that easy. There's a legislative body that is working this out because it's not extremely simple. And realize what it is they're working against. As I've said before, it may seem very simple to most people, but what they're really working against is the military-industrial complex. It always comes down to that. As I've said before, in Bitcoin we have proof of work. That's why they use the hashing mechanism, using a lot of electricity, mostly electricity that would have to be used anyway, but we can go into that at some other point. But that's called proof of work. In the United States, as far as the dollar, the US dollar is involved, it's called proof of war, and in which the military-industrial complex basically confirms with the rest of the world that the dollar is the main currency and the dollar is backed by the threat of war. And it's not done in such a blatant way as I've said. It's not like the military is threatening every country and saying you better use the dollar. In fact, the whole system has been worked out in such a way that most countries, because they are semi-isolated, and since the United States is the greatest importer of the world, the United States generally insists that they want to be able to have their supplies bought with dollars. So again, the typical situation, just like we discussed with the petrodollar, typical situation is all of these countries all over the world that trade with the United States being the biggest buyer of merchandise from all over the world. It's important that these countries are able to buy our products with dollars. And who determines the price for which these are bought? Who determines the price of the dollar? Believe me, it isn't the countries that give us the merchandise, or I should say sell us the merchandise. The determination of this price is from the United States. The United States determines what the dollar, what amount in terms of exchange is going to be for the dollar. So you've got the euro, you've got the different places in Malaysia, other different types of currencies. All of them have to deal in the dollar. So what they do is they have to buy dollars with their currency. And lately, as they've been doing it, the dollar apparently is very, very high on the chart now. It's worth more in comparison to these currencies than it has been worth for the last 10 years. Why is that? Well, it's because, again, the very mechanism for gaining this wealth through the exchanges, the United States, or I should say the Federal Reserve, basically through its members and affiliates, is able to determine what the price is. Now, what keeps them from making that price extremely high is they know that if they make it too high, they're going to devalue the currencies to such a degree that the countries cannot even make a profit off of the products that they export to us. So as a result, there is this balance somewhere in between. Now, that balance may be lost at some point because, like I've always said, that before the U.S. has incredible massive inflation in this country, they will inflate all of the other currencies. But let's go into at least something that we know, because a lot of what I'm saying, I realize people could say this is hearsay. It's just it's what you believe could happen, but how do we know? Well, all I can tell you is this is what has been happening to gold for probably the last 60 years. This is how the U.S. has suppressed the price of gold. How have they done this? Well, there is a famous suit, actually it was the U.S. Department of Justice, came up against 2 specific banks, even though 4 banks are handling all of the derivative actions in the exchanges with regard to gold. We have Chase Manhattan Bank, of course, they're always the top of there. We have Citibank, we have Bank of America, and of course we have Goldman Sachs. Now Goldman Sachs actually is only about $500 million, where we have up to $3 trillion with Citibank, roughly almost 2.5 trillion with 2.5 with Citibank, about 3.5 with Chase Manhattan. And Bank of America is much smaller, but it's right in around the trillion range. But what they have been doing is they have been basically dealing through their derivative actions, dealing with various type of brokerages in order to basically create a situation where they're putting pressure on the price of gold. And what they do is they create a lot of naked shorts, meaning that they short the market. They have a specific contract for gold that they're betting. They're betting that that price is going to go down, let's say within the next month or the next year. And they put thousands of these contracts out betting that it's going to go down and betting that it's going to go down. And then what they do, and that because it overweights, it creates pressure. It's just like it's creating air pressure or some sort of pressure to naturally push the price down. Of course, if something happens and the price goes up and they say, well, the price has gone up, you owe us more money. This is a bank. They have access to billions, trillions of dollars if they want it, but really all that needs to happen is the Federal Reserve, at least in the past and probably in the future, just prints up more money and then they just hand out the money. But another thing that happens is when it does cause pressure and cause the market to go down, the price to go down on gold, then they cancel these contracts before they expire. Now, of course, they have to pay money when they do that, but this is the U.S. government. All they have to do is print the bills. It's that simple. Or the bank has enough money and somehow at some point they're going to settle the account with the Federal Reserve. But this is a very, very convenient method, and it became known to the Department of Justice. And of course, I realize that a lot of them are hired with the idea. I believe that they probably actually do have a very legally civic-minded attitude when they start. But little do they know that they're dealing, even they have to answer to the Federal Reserve. And this is how banks have been getting away with this. This suit, by the way, against the department, against those 4 banks, I'm certain will either be dropped or Congress will figure out something else to deal with and with that effect. But just to let you know, this is what happens. This is how they do it. They've been doing it for years, and they don't just do it with gold. If you really think about it, it would make sense for them to short every single commodity and currency. And what do is they take the dollar and they buy it down. They buy everything down in price. They keep, and this is also what they've been doing with Bitcoin, the same sort of mechanism. Naked shorts trying to buy it down. There's one problem with Bitcoin. As far as gold is concerned, and as far as currencies are concerned, we know that currencies can be printed. We know that gold, well, it's hard to know exactly how much gold there is, so they can make it sound like there's so much of a supply of gold that that's why it continues to stay right around 1,700 an ounce. They can do this, but Bitcoin has a finite supply, only 21 million, and at some point, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to create enough naked shorts to short the market where Bitcoin is concerned. That is exactly what Bukele and the Plunge and El Salvador is going through as a nation. They are taking on the military-industrial complex and the Federal Reserve. Synonymous with each other they are. This is who they are taking on. So realize this is very, very important. And I wish it weren't the case, but all of the bad media that we have against El Salvador, it is all based on that. These news agencies, as I've said, have their backing from the NGOs and the military-industrial complex, Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin. These places have a tremendous amount of influence with the news because they're the ones that support them. Young journalists who probably have very, very noble ideas when they get started, once they get in the field of journalism and work for a place like CNN or any other news media, ABC, CBS, NBC, they're going to have to do what is told of them. They're going to have to create news that they are told to create based on who the sponsors are. This is the world we live in. So this is why all of the bad press, so much of it, I mean, even when the weather is bad, the world talks about El Salvador like it's somehow cursed. On the contrary, El Salvador is one of the greatest nations with one of the best presidents and the best legislative bodies in the world. They're actually trying to deal with problems. During these floods, they did everything they could to deal with these problems in spite of the opposition doing all they could to destroy them, including throwing garbage in the streets so it would clog drains and cause greater problems with the flood. Well, El Salvador is really, really sticking with their promise. And a recent drug bust where they're in Sonsonate, they were able to capture a bunch of drugs and many more pandillas. And they keep doing it, and believe me, it's creating a lot more problems. And of course, the powers that be are going to say, oh, they're hurting the freedom fighters, those beautiful drug dealers, those beautiful criminals, are being imprisoned, and it's so sad. This is what the world would want to have you think about El Salvador. But we know the truth. And I just thought it would be important to let you know that all of this manipulation of the dollar and manipulation of Bitcoin and oil and every other commodity, it is exactly what I said. It is manipulation. It is not the truth. If they were to allow markets to actually dictate what happens in true capitalism, things would be totally different. But we do not have true capitalism, unfortunately. We have a semi-fascist, corporatist, semi-socialist, at least in the way that they manipulate things to try to influence people and try to win elections. This is the type of government we have. It's not a government that works on true capitalism. If it worked on true capitalism, there would have been no bailouts, or at least the people that would have been bailed out would have been the homeowners and not the banks. But that's another story. In any case, thank you so much. It's great to be back again, but I look forward to visiting El Salvador really soon in the future. Have a beautiful evening. This is Tele-Aviacion, This Week in El Salvador. Have a beautiful evening. Good night.